Powerful song. That was really good. So, I'm going to give you a one-time chance. Ready for this? This air conditioner is broken. There's nothing I can do about it. Nothing Dan or Steve or any magician in here can do anything about it. It's not working. And that tugs most of the coolness in this building is the front unit here. So with that being said, the fellowship hall has sound and it's comfortable in there. If you don't think you can make it through class, you're free to go and hang out in the fellowship hall or get your iPhone and go watch on YouTube in any of the rooms because this wing is nice and comfortable. I did not plan this. You know, it's one of those things that's saying, God will get, yo, what? You got a fan? This is this side, this wing is blowing coolness this way, but this side's not that efficient either because it needs this one. You know, it's like they need help. What? So with that being said, I'm going to do something for you. I went over 10 minutes the first class. I'm going to try and go 45 minutes in this class. Nobody on YouTube will understand what just happened, but that was my family. I don't know what else to do with that. It's good to have people that care. So let's go to Matthew chapter 24. Which is interesting because if I get to where I want to this morning, that song fits perfectly with what I'm going to teach, but I don't think I'm going to get that far because guess what? If you're hot, I'm hotter, and there's no vents here. They planted in a building to flush the pastor out. So we're in Matthew chapter 24. We're picking up with verse 21. So we're going to get, now here's what we did. So it could kind of get you where we're at. Chapter 24 begins the talking and discussion about off the disciples' two questions. In verse 3, Jesus is telling them what the signs of the times will be that end this consummation of this age. Okay? And that's the age of Israel, not the church age. I saw somebody the other day teaching on this, and I thought it was funny. He was Jewish, and he says, the consummation of the age is the end of the church. What? How could you possibly say that? I read Matthew, and there's no church in Matthew, and we've said that many times. So verse 3, verse 4 through verse 8 talk about the first half of the tribulation. The second half of the tribulation is verses 9 through 14, and then that's a Jew telling you, a Jewish way of telling you something. I've told you everything I'm going to tell you. Now I'm going to back up and tell you when it really gets bad. It's from the middle of the tribulation to the end of the tribulation. So the middle of the tribulation is verse 15. We covered 15 through 20, where basically the abomination of desolation happens. The beast will set up his image, the dragon motivating him to be the false Messiah. He will set up his image in the temple to be worshipped by all those that have the mark of the beast. And the believers are told to run. Get out of town. Don't pick up anything. Don't get baggage. Don't carry your favorite photos. Don't carry, I have a collector's item. I got to bring my baseball card collection or whatever you got. No, leave it because you're never going to need it again after 3.5 years. Anyway, get out of town. Then in verse 21, we pick up, it says, for then there will be a great tribulation such as not occurred since the beginning of the world until now, nor ever shall be. So no matter what you do with the text of Scripture, this period of time is going to be the worst. Were you with me so far? And that's what we're going to get into this morning. We're going to get into a time of talking about not only this last half of the tribulation, but we're going to talk about, I already did that. Okay. This is why people need to escape. We've talked about how to escape, when to escape. Now we're going to talk about why. Why do you need to escape? How bad can it possibly be? It's beyond your imagination. And notice the verse, if you're looking at your text, it says, for then. And the word then is really first because this is next in a sequence. The word for is always second in a Greek sentence, but our translators put it first. He's saying, this is the reason you need to escape. That's what he's saying. For this reason, this is why you need to escape. The great tribulation's happening. Now, again, I said this in the first class. I'm going to say it again. sometimes the idea of great tribulation is not technical about the second half. It is here because that's what Jesus is going to talk about. Sometimes it just talks about the tribulation overall, the greatness of it. Here's why. Most of us have had tribulation, turmoil in our lives. And to us, it's beyond imagination. You don't know what I'm going through. But I read the Bible, and whatever you have this morning is common to man. It may not be common to everybody in your purview, and you want to tell them how bad things are, but somebody's gone through some awful things too, and you can hear that. Anytime you have a personal testimony of somebody, whether believer or not, what they've gone through in life, it's always horrific. You say, thank God I never had to go through that. But at the same time, you've maybe gone through some horrific times. This is unprecedented time in human history. Nothing like that ever again. And we know this is next in a series. And it says, there will be. And look at your text. This is important for you to see this. Because there will be. This is a future indicative. I love future indicatives. They're so much fun. Because God is telling you exactly what will happen in the future. He's not giving you lottery numbers. He's telling you exactly what will happen in the future. And only God can do it in indicative. Indicative means it's factual, it's historical. I cannot tell you anything in the future, anything, whether like next 2 hours or the next 10 minutes or the next 10 weeks, with actual factual backing. I would love to be able to do that. I kind of look like right now I'm the worst idiot in the room because I said the Orioles are a useless team. And they're the second best team in all of baseball. See, I can't tell the future. That's easy to see. Okay, and none of us can. But Jesus is telling exactly, and he's saying there will be. That's called a status quo verb. For positive understanding, there will be at some point in history a great tribulation is never seen before. Just mark that. Well, let's go to Mark. Mark says a similar thing. Mark's parallel passage in Mark 13 about the tribulation is for those days will be a time of tribulation such as not occurred since the beginning of creation, which God created until now and never will be. Unless the Lord had shortened the days, no life would be saved. But for the sake of the elect, which we'll see all this in Matthew, Mark kind of copies a lot of Matthew. The elect whom he chose, he shortened the days. And then if anyone says to you, behold, here's the Christ, or behold, here he is, do not believe him, for false Christs and false messiahs will arise and will show signs and wonders in order to lead astray, if possible, the elect. But take heed, behold, I have told you everything in advance. So Jesus is forecasting eschatological history as if it was. In Jesus being God, this has happened. This has happened. He's not in time, but he's basically teaching it as a future event that's going to happen. And I think that's fascinating. Look at Joel. Joel 1:2 says, hear this, O elders, and listen, all inhabitants of the land. Has anything like this happened in your days or in your father's days? The answer is rhetorically, no. No way. And Joel is talking about all these tribulational things. And in chapter 2, he says, blow a trumpet in Zion and sound an alarm on my holy mountain. Let all the inhabitants of the land tremble, for the day of the Lord is coming. Surely it is near. A day of darkness and gloom, a day of clouds and thick darkness. As the dawn is spread over the mountains, so there is a great and mighty people. There has never been anything like it, nor will there ever be it again to the years of many generations. Daniel 12:1, and there's just a part in here that we really need to look at. Otherwise, we could spend hours in 12:1. Now, at that time, Michael, the great prince who stands guard over the sons of your people, will arise. So Michael's the archangel of the nation of Israel. I know, I just read it. And there will be a time of distress, Jacob's trouble, a time of distress such as never occurred since there was a nation until that time. And at that time, your people, everyone who was found written in the book, will be saved, rescued. So though we've already talked about it in the first class, there's the abomination of desolation will happen. The believers will run to the mountains, not carrying any baggage, praying that it's not, winter or the Sabbath, and getting out of town and head to the mountains. And guess what? They will be rescued. How? Because God will supernaturally be involved in their ability to maintain life during that time. Isaiah 60, verse 2. I told you there's a lot of verses in the Old Testament that Jesus is pulling in. For behold, darkness will cover the earth, and deep darkness the peoples. But the Lord will rise upon you, and his glory will appear upon you, which we'll see as we get past this in Matthew. Jeremiah 30, verse 7. Alas, for that day is great. There's none like it. And it is a time of Jacob's distress, but he will be saved from it. Is this clear? That this time is guided and geared to the nation of Israel to come to the Lord, to be saved as a nation. And we know 1/3 will survive, and that 1/3 will be Matthew 23:39 people. They will call upon him. Blessed is he who comes in the name of the Lord, and Jesus will return. And that's what we've seen thus far. So, again, why do people need to escape? Because such has never occurred. Not only is it a great tribulation, but such has never occurred. The Great Tribulation, whether in most cases it refers to that 7-year period, but here we know it has to deal with the last 3.5 years. We know the beast has broken a peace treaty with Israel. He's set up an image either in the temple or the temple grounds, causing people to worship his image or die. Unbelievers have taken upon themselves the mark of the beast, either on the hand or the forehead. What is the mark of the beast? It's the mark of the beast. We have multiple ways today of encoding things. I don't know if you're going to have a puppy chip put in your neck. I don't know how it's going to work. But those that are unbelievers will get that. Believers have not, will not have been given the mark of the beast. They will be persecuted from every possible direction, and those persecutions will increase. Famine will increase. Pestilence will rise. Earthquakes will happen, and other geological phenomena will occur. Then all the believers are in a daily survival mode. How do we get through this day? And they will be praying. Praying what? Give us this day our daily bread. Isn't that kind of fascinating how all this fits together? And then, out of nowhere, the Son of Man will appear in the sky. And we'll talk about that. I'm not going to probably not get to that today. What's fascinating, because if you think about recorded history in the nation of Israel involved with other nations and how much they've been persecuted and how much they've gone through as a nation, they have been the definition of oppressed people, right? We can say, look at the nation of Israel, and they are the picture, the epitome of an oppressed nation. Because they've got it from all ends, from the moment they went into Egypt, from the moment today, they are oppressed by people around them and always on the watch. So this comes out of, a picture of Daniel's 70th week. Let's just do this. Now that I'm thinking about it. Go to Daniel chapter 9. Daniel chapter 9. Because I'm going to assume most of you don't remember, we spent like 5 weeks in Daniel 9, 24 through 27. But I'm going to repeat this many times. I think Daniel's important because Daniel lays out the grid for this time of tribulation. Jesus is expounding on that, and then he will get the revelation that he gives to John, and that gives the full intensity of the picture. So in Daniel chapter 9, verse 24, it says 70 weeks, or the 70 years, or 77s, 490 years it becomes, have been decreed upon your people and your holy city. Keep that in mind. This 490-year period is given to the nation of Israel. 483 years have been dealt with through different prophecies. There's 7 more years left on whose calendar? The nation of Israel. Know how I know that? Because it says your people and your holy city. And what's it for? And I find this fascinating how people don't realize what's going on in the tribulation. It's to finish transgression, to make an end of sin, to make atonement for iniquity, to bring in everlasting righteousness, to seal up vision and prophecy, to anoint the most holy. All those things is what this tribulation is about. People think of tribulation, God's destroying everybody and allowing the beast, the dragon, and the false prophet to rise, and he's not doing anything. No, it's all under his paradigm to bring this nation to this point that all these things are dealt with. Isn't that fascinating? And I think sometimes we miss this and don't focus on that. So let's go to verse 22, Matthew 24, like I said, I want to buzz through some of these things. And they're very important. And I've told you a lot of verses in Matthew are taken out of context, and a lot of verses people take too literally. And there's nothing wrong with having a literal interpretation, but it's got to be a literal that doesn't what? Contradict other scriptures. And doesn't contradict normal way of thinking. Now, I'm going to be honest with you. Here's what the verse says, and I'm going to be open, not honest. I'm always honest. I'm totally always honest. So, somebody got it. Unless those days have been cut short, no life would have been saved. For the sake of the elect, those days have been cut short. Now, let's talk about a day. I woke up this morning about 6 o'clock, and I know tomorrow at 6 o'clock I'll probably wake up again, and that's called 24 hours, correct? I cannot make it less than 24 hours unless I sleep to 5:59. Okay? We know a day consists of what? 24 hours. It's a day. Can't make it any shorter, can you? How would you make a day shorter? Think of the things scientifically you have to do to make a day shorter. How about a month? How can you make it shorter? You got to deal with lunar and solar and spinning the earth a little faster, which would kill you because the gravitational force you could not handle. You understand what I'm saying? So no matter what you do, you cannot make a day less than a day, a month less than a month, and a year less than a year. So when we say cut time short, well, I'm going to tell you something I've noticed the older I get. How fast time flies. And I'm annoyed by some of the things politically, like you probably are. But I look, and his term is almost up. How did that happen? Because time was what? Moving. And I look at this verse, it's not the rapidness of time, but how fast 3.5 years can really occur. A presidential term is 4 years. 3.5 years isn't that long. But when you're having hell on earth, you want it over quickly. I'm going to say this. If it lasted more than 3.5 years, no life would have survived. Nothing would survive. And then we talk about 1/3 of Israel surviving. That's a good number. Because we'll see, and what we're going to walk through is some of the different ideas of a bloodbath, but it's horrible what's going on at this time. And notice the condition of this phrase in verse 22. It says, unless those days have been cut short. That word basically is an if. It will happen. These days have not been shortened. The days haven't been shortened. The time frame is precise. Here's the other reason I say it's got to be those 3.5 years. You know how many prophecies say 3.5 years? Or give you the days, or give you the months? It's got to be 3.5 years. So I'm thinking, and then notice what it says, though, in verse 22. It says, no life would have been saved. The idea of life is not physical human life, it's all life. Animals are involved. Any species, fish, fowl, whatever you want to bring up, microscopic to the largest beast on earth. They wouldn't have survived. Everybody would have been on the dodo list. Okay, some of you don't know. Dodos are extinct. You would have gone extinct. That's how bad this time period is. And notice it says for the elect, this is another watch out for the Calvinists in this verse. It doesn't say those that are believers that have been selected before the foundation of the earth. What it says is survival on this planet is equivalent to the survival of the nation of Israel. If Israel does not survive, this planet will not survive. The elect are the believing remnant of Israel, period. If they don't survive, nothing else will. So what this time is geared to is punishment, allowing things to go on to the world, and the survival of the remnant, so this nation could be restored. Remember when we started Matthew 24, I said, don't think so much of judgment on Israel, even though judgment's occurring. It's about the blessing and the grace God extends. This verse is about God's grace. 3.5 years, that's pretty quick. I told somebody the other day, I've been in Tulsa 13 years. It feels like this. I mean, really does. It's like, wow, how quick was that? 3.5 years. But I believe everybody that's trying to survive will be praying every day for it to end. Because it's going to be horrific. And here's what they're going to, verse 24, that the misleading of this false messiahs that will happen, they even try and get the elect to believe that that's the Messiah. And Jesus gives information to say that can't be the Messiah, because here's what the return of the Son of Man looks like. There's markers that are different. And verse 31 says this, go to Matthew 24:31. He will send forth his angels with a great trumpet, and they will gather together his elect from the four winds. Who's he gathering together? Believers and those that are predestined to salvation? He's gathering together the remnant of the believing nation of Israel and bringing them together. Now, basically, what we've seen so far is what happens to those in the nation of Israel, because I think that's where the majority of believing Jews will be, that they're still going to be scattered. And they'll be in hiding also, but not as bad as these that are in that city. And that's important for us to see. So what is really meant by cut short? And I think it's interesting because this, do I even have it here? Oh, yes. Okay. Sorry who's ever up there going, oh, slides. This word about cut short is from a group of words, koloboa, is a sizable family of words, and I put them all down there so you could see. The root idea, kol, refers to things that are shorter than normal. Kolos means stunted. Kolobos means mutilated. Okay, that's right. Koluo is to clip, to crop, to abridge. Now, most of us say, I'd rather not get the full volume of, Shakespeare's. I want the abridged copy, so it's shorter, quicker. But here's the problem that's left out, because there's another use for this word. In 2 Samuel 4:12, David, who is basically carrying out judgment against the guys that killed Saul's son Ishbosheth, they cut off his hands and his feet. And that's the same word used there in the Septuagint. So I don't think this has anything to do with cutting off of hands and feet. So that's another use of the word. One lexicon adds this, and I think this is important. It's to curtail. I think it's the idea of the time framework, thank God, is 3.5 years. That's it. It's prophesied that it's 3.5 years. And I'm sticking with that idea. If it was shorter, it wouldn't carry out the punishment and wouldn't carry out the details. But think of the tribulation. This second part was 6 years, not 3.5. 7 years, 10 years. At some point, there's nobody going to be left shooting scuds and missiles and bullets at each other. There's nobody's going to be left, because this is a bloodbath. And we will go through some of this as we teach through the rest of Matthew, how horrible it is. But I believe unless the Great Tribulation was abruptly ended in the allotted time that God had given it, no life would have survived. And I would say this, thank God for his grace that it's only 3.5 years. And we will spend time going through we're going to go through just the battles of Armageddon. I'm going to show you how bloody just that end battle is. And it's already been going on prior to that, the battles. Oh, we can go back. No, we're fine. So, verse 23 and 24. We're moving right along. Look at this. We're on a clip. But if anyone says to you, behold, here is the Christ, and there he is, do not believe him, for false Christs and false prophets will arise and show great signs and wonders so as to mislead, if possible, even the elect. And I'm going to say this, then again. Sequence of things happening. This is what's happening during that tribulation period, that great tribulation period. We have basically two things, so I'm going to show you both of them. We have the presence of false Messiah and presence and power of the false messiahs and false prophets. We have presence and power. They're there. The disciples wanted to know the sign of Christ coming. And Christ is saying, this is not a sign of my coming. This is what's happening when the false ones come. And here's how you're going to know who false ones are. It's interesting that he puts this. So how he puts this, the abomination of desolation occurs. The second half of the tribulation begins. Nothing like it ever before. And within that never like it anything before moment, false messiahs and false Christs arise. And they're accompanied with great signs and great wonders, misleading even if possible, the elect. It's fascinating. Satan has been given so much leeway that him and his minions have similar power, empowerment, that God has given to certain people at certain times. They don't have all the empowerment. There's only certain things they can do. But remember, the elect are the believing remnant of Israel who sought flight into the mountains. So get a picture with me, a mental picture of where they're at. They're in the mountains. And how can the beast flush them out? How can you get them out of hiding? Here he is. Hey, guys, in the mountain. We've seen Jesus. Hey, guys, in the mountains. We've seen him in the secret room. We've seen Jesus. Come see him. Come see him, the Messiah. And you'll be thinking, hey, Messiah's here. And Jesus says, wait, listen to what I'm going to teach, because I'm going to give you a survival guide that you tell the difference between false messiahs and me showing up. There's a great difference. Which is fascinating because they're doing all these great signs and great wonders. I'm not even sure what they are, but they're convincing. They're convincing because they have similarities to what God can do, not the same, because it doesn't say to do anything supernatural. They do something magical. But they are deceiving masses of people. We will follow you because you do great things. Here's the interesting thing. I do not follow Christ because he does great things. I follow Christ because he died for my sins. You hear the difference? Does he do great things? Absolutely. He's God. But I'm not following him for the magic show. I'm following him for the salvation he has displayed. Hear the difference? And these guys are following this because the show is on. They follow the signs and the wonders. They follow who's empowering them. They have misled many. They could possibly even mislead true believers. Now think about it today. How many people are drawn to the emotional shows that go on today in many places? They want to go somewhere and say, hey, look what's going on. Isn't this great? I went out of there and I felt so good. And look what this guy did and how many people were healed and so on and so forth. But it's a vast difference between what Christ will do at his return and what these guys are basically falsifying. Now think about this. These false messiahs and false prophets are laying a foundation of deception. They're not laying a foundation of salvation. They're laying a foundation of deception. And I think that's important for us to see, because Christ's return is, the scenario of Christ's return, let's do this, is so much greater. It can't be impersonated. How did these guys show up? How did these false messiahs? All of a sudden they're there. Here he is. There he is. How did he arrive? No one knows. We've not given any information how they showed up on the scene. So the middle of the tribulation happens when the beast sets up his image in the temple. People will either worship the image or flee to the mountains. Those in the mountains are believing remnant of Israel waiting for the Messiah. So far, they've been supernaturally supplied. They've survived. They're waiting for the Messiah. They are fertile ground for someone to yell, he's here. And by grace, this time has been not extended, but feels like a short time, this 3.5-year period. But they're in the mountains trying to survive. Yule Gibbonsing it. They're eating off them, foraging off the land. God has maybe supplied manna. We're back again. I don't know. And when the false messiahs come along with pseudo credentials, because the credentials are, look what I can do. I can do these great signs and great wonders. Those are their credentials saying, this is who I am. Christ's credentials when he returns are exponentially more significant. But people are always been enamored to believe in things because of what they've seen, what they want to see. But these prophets, these false messiahs, are acting presumptuously, as Deuteronomy talks about, and their end is inevitable, as Deuteronomy talks about. And they only have a short time, because when Christ returns, guess what he does with these false messiahs? The dragon, the beast, and the false prophet, he takes them all and casts them into the lake of fire. It's fascinating because if we look at today's spiritual environment, and what I could say this, spiritual dynamics are changing rapidly. What people think are spiritual dynamics. Think of the tribulation, how much more they'll be changed. Will they be biblically oriented? And they won't. Most of it's going to be about self-oriented, about somebody posing as God who is not God. And then Jesus says this, which I find fascinating. Behold, I've told you in advance. 3 simple Greek words that say so much. 3 simple ideas that say beyond what these words in translation really mean. And I find this, because he's closing, now here's what I'm just saying. He's closing this section off to tell you what his return will be like. But I've told you all this in advance. You have the information to know that these things will occur. So let's say, for conversation's sake, I'm in the tribulation right now. The abomination has happened. I read this, and there's false messiahs doing signs and wonders. I'm going to say, that's not Christ. That's not Christ. That's false. Because Christ told me in advance. Kind of get what I'm saying? But then here's the important thing. Read on. And we will soon in a few minutes, hopefully. So the 3 Greek words. Greek word number 1 is edon. Edon is an aorist imperative. Aorist middle imperative. That means it's basically saying this verb can be used of perception of supernatural events. Behold, you've seen these supernatural events, but I've told you in advance they're going to happen. Don't get so excited. So these disciples, through Jesus' depiction of end times events, have seen supernatural. What Jesus has done is supernatural. Most of what he's done, beyond these signs and wonders these guys will bring out. It's also, do I have it in? Okay. It's also in the aorist, which is talking about an event. The event Jesus is talking about is right here in Matthew. I have told you this in advance, right now. This is the only warning you get, so I kind of take it as a warning. Get how I'm looking at it? And the understanding of this word, and you're supposed to do it for your benefit. That's what the middle voice says. But seeing what I have taught you, look out. That's what Jesus is saying. Behold what I've taught you. Be on the lookout. Be on the guard. Be on watch. How about this? Ready this, church? Take notes. Write it down in your mental brains that this is going to happen first. The second word is humus, which is a pronoun, basically, and it's to your advantage. I've told you this to your advantage. It's interesting. Jesus isn't teaching just to hear himself talk. He's teaching to give people a step up, a foot up. Then there's prorica. Prorica is a verb, and it's a compound word of two different. I don't have it in here, do I? Okay, I don't have it in here. It's compound word. It's apo and epon. Apo, epon. It's to tell something before the time, to announce previously, to foretell. I believe all these have to do. This word is always used with reference to future or end time or eschatological events, whatever you want to do with that. And here's the interesting thing. This verb is in the perfect tense. That means I've told you this in advance. Told you it beforehand with abiding results. What's the abiding results? That you have knowledge of the events that will occur during the tribulation. I read 24. Here's the events. That's always with you. I've told you, and the telling, the teaching of these things goes on throughout all time. So Jesus is stating that both to his disciples and those who read these words, take note, be on watch, as different events unfold, because Jesus has given all the necessary information to arm the believer to both be aware of and to recognize events, false messiahs, false prophets, and this is to their advantage. Jesus has given them what I would call the heads up. They have everything they need to survive thus far, and he's going to give more. And therefore, it gives us the basis that no believer during the tribulation can be misled by this. Because they say that's not, here's the worst thing with prophecy. If somebody says, this is that, something's happening, some nation goes at war, or some president goes crazy, and we say, that's Bible coming true. This is that. Don't do that with prophecy. You can say, this could be that, this may be that, and this is probably not that. Because here's the thing. We have enough information to say, this doesn't match Scripture. It could be a trend. I like the idea of trend. It's trending to get worse, because I don't think anything's going to trend to get better. I had a friend when I was younger, he said, oh, we're just going to go into the millennial kingdom. He's an amillennialist. I go, really? How's that going to happen? Oh, we're just going to get better. We're going to lead people to the Lord, and we're going to get better. You could lead lots of people to the Lord, which is not going to happen. I don't know if you realize this. The worldview is getting worse. It's not a biblical worldview. It's a secular worldview, and I don't expect things to get better. I know it's bad news. You didn't come here for bad news this morning. Have some Trace Slade cheese letter. You'll be fine. So let's get 3 conclusions out of this verse. Okay? Conclusion number 1 is from Louw-Nida. It's a dictionary. It says to warn. To tell someone that some future events happening is dangerous and and will lead to serious consequences. That's what it says in the. I said that's perfect for this word. To tell someone that some future happening is dangerous. That's what Jesus has been talking about. Get to the mountains, flee, and may lead to serious consequences. You could be misled. Don't get involved with this. This isn't about me yet. Second conclusion. This verse is a hinge verse. People proclaim Messiahs here. Then Jesus warns them that he had foretold them that all they need to know so they will not be misled. Then he tells them what his return will be like, which will be vastly different. Isn't that cool? Thirdly, Jesus is a prophet. I don't know what else to do with that. I had a whole bunch of information. I'm going to say all these things that Jesus is a prophet. But I'm going to say this. No prophet who's God's prophet has any prophecies given that does not ultimately get fulfilled, period. Otherwise, he's not a prophet. Jesus is God in human flesh, and he's also a prophet. How well is his prophecies? Spot on, right? All right, so I'm going to do something, and then we got 5 minutes because I'm going to get you out of here to 1:45. I promise you, because most of you were sweating already, and it's not from my sermon. So let's talk about some details of the return of the Son of Man. Now, I'm going to blow by this real quick. I just want to go through this. I'm going to give you an outline of these verses. This gives you probably pretty much what you need, and then we're going to discuss them next week, and then we'll go back to that slide and start over. First of all, verse 26 talks about Jesus' return will not be hidden. He's not going to be in a closet or a secret room, and nobody's at the point, here's the Messiah. He'll do the pointing out of who he is himself. Think about that for a minute. All will know. Secondly, Jesus' return will not be obscured, but will be obvious and brilliant. I know, I like watching things in the sky sometimes. And there was a time where it says, the space lab's coming over. So I was waiting for it to go. I was expecting, and it was like, I was watching the signs in the sky. You know what you need to do? Don't watch in the city. Don't watch in someone's secret house. Don't wait for someone to point it out. You'll see it coming in the sky. We'll talk about that. Jesus' return will be marked by a bloodbath. I know, the Bible's so bloody. It's going to get worse. I'm telling you this now. Verse 29, Jesus' return will be an astrological event. It won't just involve terra firma. There he is, here he is, there he is. You'll know. The sky will shake. Things will shut off. Things will happen. Yes, a day will change its time frame because he's going to stop things on a dime. Jesus' return, verse 30, will be celestial, and all will see. I don't know how that's going to happen. I really don't, because I know how the world is round, and we really can't see around the corner. But Jesus is God. He can do anything. And I don't think his return is going to be like a little guy coming down to the sky. Okay? Verse 31, Jesus' return will be heralded by the angels and co-joined with the remnant of Israel. Angels will come. Not somebody yelling, hey, there's the Messiah. Angels will be accompanying him. Now kind of get a visual if you're an artist at any point. Huge Jesus returning for battle, Lord of Lords, King of Kings, coming down with myriad upon myriad of angels, and the remnant on earth being regathered instantaneously to the nation of Israel. I don't know about you, that's goosebumps, even in the heat. That's craziness. So we're going to look through all these things because Jesus says you could see that when I return, will be totally different than what you think is pointed out. These are messiahs and the falseness of those things going on. So we're going to pick up next week. I'm going to give you 20 minutes. Go get some air. I'm doing this because I'm hot. If I'm hot, you guys are hot. And pray that we get the air conditioner fixed this week. Otherwise, next week's sermon will be 45 minutes. No, don't pray. Never mind. Some of you just say, oh, let's never have the air conditioner again. Father, we thank you for this time and bless our time of fellowship. Help us to spend time getting to know each other. And we just love the fact that your son came. He died on the cross for our sins, but better than that, he's coming again to rule and to reign, and the magnificence of who he is will shine throughout all the inhabited earth. In Jesus' name, amen. Grace and peace.